I always add these down because they don't have chapter titles, but it helps, I think. So chapter 6, okay, the remarkable incident of Dr. Lanyon. Who is Dr. Lanyon? Do you remember him? He's the friend, so let's add this down. So he's the friend from chapter 2 that has had the falling out with Jekyll. Okay, now again, I'm going to add this as well. There's a sense of like the sensational. So everything is like the crazy incident, the remarkable incident. Everything is like big and dramatic. And then it's like one Thursday afternoon. So it tends to be a little more down. Anyway, let's do this. So, time ran on. So again, another example of time passes, right? So time runs on. Thousands of pounds were offered in reward for the death of Sir Danvers was resented as a public injury. So there's a reward, like a ransom almost, right, for Mr. Hyde. So if you can find this guy and bring him to justice, thousands of pounds will be benefits. Remember, in those days, thousands of pounds, we're talking 100 grand, 200 grand to bring this guy in. Because Sir Danvers Carew was a public person, right? It's like the death of a king or a queen. Like, the public want justice. Okay? But Mr. Hyde had disappeared out of the ken. The ken is an old-fashioned word for the view, the vision of the police, as though he had never existed. So he just vanishes. He's gone. Much of his past was unearthed, indeed, and all disreputable. So people are digging around for dirt on this guy, right? Who is Mr. Hyde? So all of his past is disreputable, meaning disrespectful, bad reputation. Okay, so it's all bad. Here are some of the things that he does. Tales came out about the man's cruelty, at once so callous and violent, of his vile life, his strange associates, so his weird mates, of the hatred that seemed to have surrounded his career. But of his present whereabouts, not a whisper. So he kind of, in a way, he becomes the talk of gossip, right? Who is this guy? Oh, he hangs out with that guy. Oh, do you know he lives in filth, right? It's all just like killing his reputation. Not a whisper. From the time he had left the house in Soho on the morning of the murder, he was simply blotted out. And gradually, as time drew on, Mr. Utterson began to recover from the hotness of his alarm and to grow more at quiet with himself. The death of Sir Danvers was, to his way of thinking, more than paid by the disappearance of Mr. Hyde. So, Utterson kind of starts to relax, right? It says here he grew more quiet with himself. So time goes on and he starts to relax. He starts to forget about Hyde. He even says here that to get rid of Hyde was worth the death of Sir Danvers. The fact that his friend died but got rid of Hyde, he says, it was kind of worth it. This shows you how much, how troubled he is by Hyde. That he's just pleased that Hyde is gone from his mind. Now that evil influence had been withdrawn, a new life began for Dr. Jekyll. He came out of his seclusion, renewed relations with his friends, became once more their familiar guest and entertainer. And while he had always been known for charities, he was now no less distinguished for religion. So Jekyll goes religious, right? Charity, religion. He was busy. He was much in the open air. He did good. His face seemed to open and brighten, as if with inward consciousness of service. And for more than 2 months, the doctor was at peace. So, this is important. This is really good for later, right? So Jekyll, I'm going to put Jekyll is reborn. Okay? So when Hyde goes, Jekyll essentially becomes a new man again, right? He's freed of this horrible influence. He turns to God, he starts doing charity, he starts being out and about more, he becomes more of a sort of open public person. So Jekyll is reborn. For 2 months, however, on the 8th of January, Utterson dined at the doctor's with a small party. Lanyon had been there, and the face of the host had looked from one to the other as in the old days when the trio were inseparable friends. So we have the friendship here, right? The friendship has been restored. They fell out, now they're all mates again. On the 12th and again on the 14th, the door was shut against the lawyer. Okay? The door was shut against the lawyer. The doctor was quite confined to the house, Paul said, and saw no one. Okay, confined is a nice word. So he locks himself away. Locks away. On the 15th, he tried again, and was again refused. And having now been used for the last 2 months to see his friend almost daily, he found this return of solitude to weigh upon his spirits. The 5th night, he had in guest to dine with him, and the 6th, he betook himself to Dr. Lanyon's. So something has happened, right? So Jekyll disappears. So he comes back out, he goes back in. Then at least he was not denied admittance. So he goes to Lanyon's house. But when he came in, he was shocked at the change which had taken place in the doctor's appearance. He had his death warrant written legibly upon his face. So he looks like he's going to die. He looks like death. The rosy man had grown pale. His flesh had fallen away. So he's not like a zombie, but he's gaunt, he's thin. He was visibly bolder and older. And yet it was not so much these tokens of a swift physical decay that arrested the lawyer's notice as the look in the eye and the quality of manner that, page, seemed to testify to some deep-seated terror of the mind. They love this, don't they? The terror of the mind. So he goes round to his mate's house, and his mate's like this. He's bald, all of his hair's fallen out, he's thin, he looks like death, and he's kind of gone crazy, right? So something has made him go mad. It was unlikely that the doctor should fear death, and yet that was what Utterson was tempted to suspect. Yes, he thought, he is a doctor. He must know his own state and that his days are counted, and the knowledge is more than he can bear. So he makes a guess. He says, oh, okay, well, he's a doctor, he knows that he's going to die and he's scared of death, right? And yet, when Utterson remarked on his ill looks, it was with an air of greatness that Lanyon declared himself a doomed man. A doomed man. I'm doomed. I have had a shock, he said, and I shall never recover. It is a question of weeks. So he says, I've got weeks. He's got weeks to live. Right. So he's got weeks to live. Well, life has been pleasant. I liked it. Yes, sir, I used to like it. I sometimes think if we knew all, we should be more glad to get away. So this is the word we use for this is very mellow, dramatic. So He goes to see his friend, and his friend is looking terrible. He's sat there like this, and he's like, I've had a shock, Utterson. I'm going to die in weeks. I used to like my life until something happened. And now I think if you knew what I knew, we would all wish to be dead. Right? Glad to get away is to wish to die. Okay. Jekyll is ill too, observed Utterson. Have you seen him? But Lanyon's face changed, and he held up a trembling hand. I wish to see or hear no more of Dr. Jekyll, he said in a loud, unsteady voice. I am quite done with that person, and I beg that you will spare me any allusion to one who I regard as dead. Ooh. They've had another falling out, haven't they? Right? Let's underline some stuff. I am quite done with that person. I beg that you will spare me any allusion to one I regard as dead. So there's been a falling out. Again. They fell out. They were friends. They fell out. Tut tut, said Mr. Utterson. Then after a considerable pause, can't I do anything? He inquired. We are three very old friends, Lanyon. We should not live to make others. I quite like this as an attitude about friendship. It's like, we're old friends. We don't make new friends anymore. Right? That's it. Like, we've all we've got. Nothing can be done, returned Lanyon. Ask himself. He will not see me, said the lawyer. So Utterson is kind of, again, there's a sense here of tradition. So he's like, come on, man. Like, can we not fix this? Like, can I do anything? Can I fix the situation? No, it's impossible. I am not surprised. I'm not surprised that, was the reply. Some day, Utterson, after I am dead, you may perhaps come to learn the right and wrong of this. I cannot tell you. And in the meantime, if you can sit and talk to me of other things, for God's sake, stay and do so. But if you cannot keep clear of this accursed topic, meaning Jekyll, then, in God's name, go, for I cannot bear it. So he's like, you want to stay and talk about like selling Sunset, we'll talk about FIFA, fine, but don't talk about Jekyll. Right? I will not listen to things about Jekyll. At all. And then it's the classic thing, which is he says, I can't tell you why, right? So we've got more omission here, we've got more mystery. It's like, one day, Utterson, you'll know why. I can't tell you why, but one day you'll know, but not for me. Any theories why Lanyon can't just tell him what's going on? Very good, yeah. So again, we have this idea of sort of like keeping secrets, right? He can't say because he has loyalty to Jekyll. He can't gossip about him. As soon as he got home, Utterson sat down and wrote to Jekyll, complaining of his exclusion from the house and asking the cause of this unhappy break with Lanyon. So he writes him a letter and he says, why are you not letting me come round, and why have you fallen out with Dr. Lanyon? The next day brought him a long answer, often very pathetically worded, and sometimes darkly mysterious in drift. So he gets the letter from Jekyll. He says the letter's weird. It's a weird letter, right? It's pathetic. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, I can't come out. And mysterious. The quarrel with Lanyon was incurable. Can't be fixed. I do not blame our old friend, Jekyll wrote, but I share his view that we must never meet. I mean from henceforth to lead a life of extreme seclusion. You must not be surprised, nor must you doubt my friendship, if my door is often shut, even to you. You must suffer me to go my own dark way. Right, when this is good stuff for Jekyll, right? My own dark way. So you must let me do things on my own. I have brought on myself a punishment and a danger that I cannot name. If I am the chief of sinners, I am the chief of sufferers also. So chief of sinners means that, he says, if I am a criminal, can you still see that? If I'm a criminal, I'm also a victim. I am both the criminal and the victim here. I could not think that this earth contained a place for sufferings and terrors so unmanning. And you can do but one thing, Utterson, to lighten this destiny, and that is to respect my silence. What's going on here? Yeah. Yeah. This is like a breakup, isn't it? It's a breakup. Now, don't get confused. They're not. Listen, I know you get excited about this, right? They're not in a sexual loving relationship, but they are old mates. Jekyll's breaking up with him. Jekyll's saying, "I'm going to live a life of seclusion." Says, "I'm going to be alone." He says that I am suffering, and he says to leave me alone. Right? Don't come round. Don't call on me. Leave me alone. Yes. Mr. Enfield is probably at a bar somewhere. But he does come back in the story later. Enfield is his cousin. So Utterson and Enfield go on a walk every Sunday. But Enfield is his family, whereas Jekyll is his old school friend. Okay? Now, this is very good for our... Are you alright? This is very good for our Jekyll middle. Okay? So Jekyll says, leave me be, right? I want no more friendship. No more friendship. Utterson was amazed. The dark influence of Hyde, underline please, had been withdrawn. The doctor had returned to his old tasks and amities. A week ago, the prospector smiled with every promise of a cheerful and an honoured age. And now in a moment, friendship and peace of mind, the whole tenor of life were wrecked. So he says, just like that, his life is ruined, right? Wrecked. So great and unprepared a change pointed to madness. Madness. But in view of Lanyon's manner and words, there must lie some deeper ground. A week afterwards, Dr. Lanyon took to his bed, and in something less than a fortnight, he was dead. So Lanyon dies, right? He dies of shock, which is a very Victorian thing. It's not very common now. So something happens, he goes, I've had a shock. I've got 2 weeks to live, and he dies, right? Dr. Lanyon is dead. Let's not be confused here. He is dead, right? The night after the funeral, which had been sadly affected, Utterson locked the door of his business room, and sitting there by the light of a melancholy candle, drew out and set before him an envelope, underline please, addressed by the hand and sealed with the seal of his dead friend. Who's his dead friend? Lanyon, thank you, Michael. Right? Private! Private! To the hands of J.G. Utterson alone, and in case of his predecease, to be destroyed unread. So this is to be read by Utterson only, and if Utterson dies, destroy it. So this contains in it the secret, okay, the mysteries in this letter. So it was emphatically superscribed. The lawyer dreaded to behold the contents. Ladies, you okay? I have buried one friend today, he thought. What if this should cost me another? So he's worried this letter is going to be about Jekyll. So even though Jekyll's said this to him, he's like, he'll come back to me, right? What if I read this letter and it ruins the friendship? Okay. And then he condemned the fear as disloyalty and broke the seal. So he opens it, right? Opens the letter. Within there was another letter. A letter in the letter. Likewise sealed and marked upon the cover as not to be opened until the death or disappearance of Dr. Henry Jekyll. Utterson could not trust his eyes. Yes, it was disappearance. Here again as the mad will, which he had long ago restored to its author. Here again was the idea of a disappearance and the name of Henry Jekyll. So it's linking to the will. To the will. But in the will, that idea had sprung from the sinister suggestion of the man Hyde. Sorry. It was set there with a purpose all too plain and horrible. So this here is murder. Written by the hand of Lanyon. What should it mean? A great curiosity came on the trustee to disregard the prohibition and dive at once to the bottom of these mysteries. Okay, so he's tempted, isn't he? The professional honour and faith to his dead friend were stringent obligations, and the packet slept in the innermost corner of his private safe. Okay, so he doesn't open it. Right, we'll pause there for a second because I've read a lot. Okay, so Lanyon dies. Lanyon gives a letter to Utterson which says only to the eyes of Utterson. He opens the letter. Inside is another letter, and that letter says not to be read until the death of the spirit of right. Utterson does not read it. Inside that letter is the answer to the mystery. He does not read it. Here's my question for you. If you were Utterson, if you were an old Victorian man, which is probably very hard to imagine, would you read the letter? It says do not read it. Would you read that letter?
Yeah, how would I read it?
Would you? Well, let me check. Sorry, I'm sorry. Let me check. Who would read it? Who would read it? Who would be like uncracking into that? Oh, no, what's going on? They have to. Who would respect their friend's wishes? So this side of the room here, very, very driven by their curiosity. This side of it more old school, more Victorian. You'd actually put it in the safe, not read it. What you can do sometimes, you can like use steam and like open it and read it and go back. See that. Anyway, this is maybe the best quote for Utterson. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to highlight this straight up. Okay, this is what he says. He says, it is one thing to mortify curiosity, another to conquer it. It is one thing to mortify curiosity, another to conquer it. And it may be doubted if, from that day forth, Utterson desired the society of his surviving friend with the same eagerness. What does he mean by that? It is one thing to mortify curiosity, another to conquer it. When I'll talk about it, then you can tell me, right? What does he mean by that? He's proud of this. No? I know you've lost your friend. Right, now, so this this quote is really good because what it does is, you ready? It gives you a sense of, right, back in please. So Utterson's mindset, okay? This is what he thinks. Now, to mortify means to kill. Now, if you remember way back in chapter 1, this word is used in chapter 1. It says that he drinks gin to mortify a taste for wine. To mortify means to kill. So it's one thing to kill your curiosity. How do you kill curiosity? Opening the letter. Another, to conquer it. So he thinks that a good man is somebody that can repress their curiosity. He doesn't want to kill it, he wants it to be there, he wants to have power over it. So he says, to be a proper man, you have to repress the curiosity. So he's got in his safe the letter that reveals the whole mystery, and he does not read it. That is this man, right? That is him in a nutshell. Okay. From that day forth, Utterson desired the society of his surviving friend with the same eagerness. He thought of him kindly. Okay, now surviving friend is Jekyll. So he's only got one friend left now. His other friend's dead. He's got Jekyll. He thought of him kindly. But his thoughts were disquieted and fearful. He went to call indeed, but he was relieved to be denied admittance. Perhaps in his heart he preferred to speak with Paul upon the doorstep and surrounded by the air and sounds of the open city, rather than be admitted into that house of voluntary bondage. So the prison. So what he does is this. Jekyll says, don't come and see me. But he still goes, but he's relieved when he's not allowed to see him. He doesn't really want to see him. So he's kind of relieved when Jekyll's like, oh, you can't come in. Sit and speak of its inscrutable recluse. Paul had indeed no very pleasant news to communicate. The doctor, it appeared, now more than ever, confined himself to the cabinet over the laboratory. So even within his house, he's imprisoned himself in the little room above his lab, where he would sometimes even sleep. He was out of spirits. He had grown very silent. He did not read. It seemed as if he had something on his mind. Utterson became so used to the unvarying character of these reports that he fell off little by little in the frequency of his visits. So he stops visiting. So again, it's another chapter where it kind of sways to and fro quite a lot. So at the beginning, we have this idea that everything is good. Jekyll's come back into the world. He's hosting dinner parties again. He's out in the world. He's doing charity. He's talking about God. Then Jekyll disappears again. He goes to see Lanyon. Lanyon says, something terrible has happened. I can't tell you what it is, right? But it's so bad that it's going to actually kill me. He then dies, gives Utterson a letter which says, do not open this letter until Jekyll is dead. Utterson puts it in the safe and then very slowly stops seeing Jekyll. Jekyll also tells Utterson, I do not want to see you anymore. So Jekyll completely vanishes in life. And Anderson thinks it's weird because as far as he's concerned, Hyde's gone. He's like, why is Jekyll doing this? Because Hyde's no longer around. How mysterious. Okay?